Good afternoon and welcome to Afternoons with Ash Black. Suicide can touch anyone, anywhere, and at any time, but it is not inevitable. There is hope. So if you or someone you know is struggling, or if you are feeling alone and having thoughts of suicide, whether or not you are in crisis, if you know someone who is, please don't remain silent. You are not alone. Talk to someone you can trust, or through the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Anyone can call or text 988, or just chat, the Lifeline. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Afternoons with Ash Black. Today's conversation is not just about inspiration and advocacy. It's about addressing a critical issue that affects too many lives every single day. Approximately 123 Americans die by suicide. It's a staggering number, and it reminds us of the urgency to talk openly about mental health. The truth is that suicide is not just a statistic. It's a deeply personal struggle for far too many people. According to a recent statistics report provided by the actionalliance.org and also available on kitsapcounty.org's public website, recent research would indicate that in the U.S., suicide is currently the 10th leading cause of death among Americans. And shockingly, it's the second leading cause of death among teenagers, with Washington State in particular reporting a national average among individuals between ages 1 to 44 at a 2% overall increase above the national average as of the year 2018. For one particular demographic, LGBTQ+, and Black, Indigenous, people of color, teen groups, the numbers are even more alarming, with over 20% attempting suicide and an even more staggering 45% seriously considering it. This is all according to a Youth Risk Behavior Survey data summary and trends report that's available online for the years 2011 to 2021. Though these numbers are not available for our particular community, we must remember that for each one of these numbers, they represent someone who's been affected. The numbers are significant, especially when a portion of these deaths are entirely preventable. For each one of these deaths represents more than a number. It represents a face, a name, a life that's full of dreams, a desire to receive love, and an endless capacity to give love in return. A life that's been ultimately cut short. Joining us today on Afternoons with Ash are my friends Angela and Andy Lujan from northwesthopefulhorizons.org to talk to us about the issues that are faced by the LGBTQ+ and BIPOC communities and the inherent risks that are faced by those who experience alienation and stigma within the community for identifying as such. Northwest Hopeful Horizons, their organization, is dedicated to providing advocacy, education, and resources to communities that are particularly hit hard by these statistics, specifically that of the LGBTQA and BIPOC community and their families. By providing youth and parents the support and education that they need, they hope to empower folks with the support necessary to lead happy, healthy lives. Angela, Andy, thank you so much for being here today on our show. I wanted to ask you guys a little bit about Northwest Hopeful Horizons, a mission for diversity and inclusion. It says also on the website, advocacy, collaboration, and community building. These are the tenets of Northwest Hopeful Horizons as an organization. You guys are dedicated to creating a society that empowers individuals to succeed, with particular focus on that of the LGBTQA and BIPOC communities, Black, Indigenous, people of color. What inspired you to do this kind of work?
I myself, Ash, I'm a mental health counselor. I've been serving the community now for 10 years. And I specialize specifically in ages 13 through all ages of adults. My first, 3 years in mental health focused on youth, and youth in areas that were definitely at risk, foster care, various levels of Department and Child and Family Services. And I could see so many youth struggling from that time back in 2013 to presently post-COVID 2023. And these youth struggle with a sense of belonging. They struggle with their identity. feeling accepted, loved, being heard, feeling validated on their struggles and who they are. And some people say, yeah, this is a mental health concern. But I think it dives deeper. It's a societal concern. It's a systematic concern. These young people, they're the new leaders of the world around us. And it's important to be able to lean in, provide support, provide advocacy. And other than it just being a journey of mental health for me as a professional, for me, it's also been as a parent. I have 3 children, and 2 of my children identify within the LGBTQIA population. And our youngest, Andy here, we've been on a journey with Andy now for 5 years, coming out as a trans youth. First identifying in various areas of maybe just sexuality and curiosity, which comes up often, around puberty. And then, going into early high school years of this is how I identify. And as a parent, it was different than a mental health counselor. As a parent, I'm like, it challenged who I thought my child was. And at first, I wasn't 100% accepting. And then reflecting that within the youth that I worked with, and I went, wait a second, this is a me thing, not my child. So what do I need to do to lean in and learn from my child? And my husband and I learned amazing things from all 3 of our children, as well as the youth that I work with in the community. So maybe Andy can speak to that a little bit in regards to our support and our family and while we're on this journey.
So I came out as trans when I was in 6th grade. It was after a pretty traumatic event, as I just got done going through cancer and chemo. So I dealt a lot with not knowing really where I was and who I was, as my whole worldview totally changed in that moment. Then as I explored middle school, it was almost pushed on me because I acted more masculine and hung out with more guys of like, who are you? And that question changed everything for me, because then I went into exploring, okay, who am I? Because at that time I didn't know. So then coming out, like my mom said, she wasn't fully accepting at first, but it was kind of helping and educate of like, you wouldn't deny somebody with ADHD or bipolar medication to be happy. Why would you deny somebody because they're transgender? And it is a life or death thing, because with unacceptance from peers and a lot of stuff, I struggled mentally. Because going along with not knowing who you are and not having that sense of belonging or identity, and then adding harassment, bullying on top of that, it really adds to that struggle, along with not feeling like yourself inside of your own body. So I'm trying to help with my own personal story, to help both parents and other teens like me understand, like, it's okay to be where we are.
The numbers that we talk about here in our show's opening, a lot of those statistics were pulled from a report that took place over the 10-year period that you've also been operating. Andy, you have the fortunate experience of being a youth that lives within this world. Tell me a little bit about these numbers and what it's like for you, when you were in school, experiencing this kind of stigma. And, I use the word stigma because it's a word that we toss around a lot in the news when confronting this situation. I don't think a lot of people realize that, we define stigma as being a mark on the face or the body, a characteristic of something that is unwanted or dirty. And I feel like it's important to note that, words do have meaning. And when we use them and apply them, we have to be cognizant of what these terms really mean. Tell me a little bit about your experience and the experience of those that live within these communities and the stigma that's attached with being honest about your sexuality.
So, with living in Washington, I do consider myself quite grateful because I live in a state that does allow me access to affirming care and allows me to have access to these different therapies and different things. But seeing these statistics, it's really disheartening because I know that if other states were as accepting, these rates wouldn't be as high. And knowing, like, I have friends who've gotten kicked out just for being who they are. And I find myself lucky because we did find that support in our family and acceptance, but not a lot of people have that. And as another trans teen, it's hard to watch because I consider those people, my brothers and sisters, like, those are my other trans siblings, my other queer siblings. So seeing how our community is getting attacked is never a fun thing to see, and it's overall really disheartening.
In doing research for this episode, I came upon a theory. It's referred to as the minority stress theory. And, from the name of it, it might suggest that people would assume it only applies to that of minorities, but, LGBTQA plus, people of indigenous colors, these are considered to be minority groups. The study says that those within these minority groups commonly experience distinct and chronic stressors related to sexual orientation and gender identity. It's often referenced in literature as a key stressor in the rate of suicide among youth who identify as LGBTQA plus and biracial or a person of color. Could you speak on why these numbers seem to reflect alarming trends within these communities as opposed to that of individuals who often identify as heterosexual?
Well, Ash, in regards to that, it has to do with kind of what you brought up in regards to stigma, right? As a society, we see certain things as dirty or wrong or bad, and we put them in a negative light based on personal judgments, lack of education around it. In our community, we're seeing this occur. One of our local schools had students where there's only two genders, yet we have scientific facts saying the brain is changing in our adolescence as decades go by. That chemically, biologically, we know that there's not two genders. We can go back through history into, BC and see people in history that identified as two-spirit and other than a typical male or female biological roles. And we know scientifically that's not fact. In another school district, we're seeing individuals of color, specifically in the Latina community, get attacked, stating that they're less than, that they don't belong. We're seeing this all over our county, and it's impacting youth. It's impacting their feeling of sense of belonging, sense of being seen, sense of being heard. So even if they have it at home, when they step outside of their home, to not feel seen, heard, or like they have an identity that is valued, whether it's a struggle of identity of gender or sexuality, it's identity as a person. I'm human. I have rights. I have the ability to be seen, heard, listened to, and they don't feel that. One of my favorite acronyms is LOVE. Listen, understand, and validate. It's not LOV. It's LUV. And when we LUV our youth and make them feel seen, heard, and belong, then, man, that makes a world of difference in our kids. But in this county, we're currently seeing them feel invisible. And that's what increases these rates of suicidality. In our current county, there is a statistic amongst the Kitsap Health District. In 2001, they put out a youth survey, and individuals other than heterosexual individuals, youth of color and LGBTQIA youth, actually reported at a 63% over the 26% of having either thoughts of suicide or having attempts of suicide. That's more than, well, it is 40% higher in this population here within our county.
You just mentioned the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. It states that through 2011 to 2021, LGBTQ plus and BIPOC teens account for 20% of those attempting suicide, 45% of that number seriously considering it.
Yeah.
What can be done within our community to affect those numbers?
Well, part of that is what we hope within Northwest Hopeful Horizons is to provide mentorship, access to community resources, safe places, sense of belonging, finding what are our safe spaces within our community where youth can go in and feel like, okay, people see me, people understand who I am and accept me. But within our space, being able to have valuable skills and tools that they can leave with at the end of the day, and also support from individuals who they can identify with, other individuals of color, other individuals who are part of the LGBTQIA community.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with my mom's statement there. I also feel like giving youth a space where they have a voice definitely helps, because even if it's just being heard by their peers, you're giving youth a voice who before were silenced. And being silenced is a lot of why we have these statistics, is because youth are either afraid to speak out or have been told they're not allowed to. So giving them a space where they are allowed to and they feel like they're able to and are happy to speak out and just have their voice heard.
So I think, talking about having a space, it's important for us to, maybe highlight some of the different things that you guys do specifically within the community. And I'd also like to hear about some of your partners, anyone who's been involved with helping make this mission clear and, spread love and inclusion here in Kitsap County. Why don't you tell me a little bit about the programs that Northwest Hopeful Horizons offers to our community?
Yeah, we just secured a location, so we'll be offering in-person groups starting in November. These groups will be up to 12 youth at a time over 12 weeks, assisting with parent education, parent engagement, and providing one-on-one mentorship, community resources, and connection. Some of our partners, we've connected with the local juvenile justice system for kids that are often labeled as youth at risk in a negative way, to empower them that there are resources, that they're not bad kids, they're in struggles, and they can have a place to go after they're out of one system into a healthier environment where they have support. Also being able to connect them to like Coffee Oasis if they struggle with homelessness, being able to connect them with Trevor's Project, which isn't a local resource, but they're a nationwide. So if they are struggling with mental health and suicidality, it's a great place where they specifically focus on LGBTQIA youth and creating a safe space to talk about belonging and the risk of suicide and other ways that they can face it. We will be partnering with West Sound Wellness Foundation, which specifically took over the Kitsap HIV and AIDS Foundation. One of our biggest growing areas of HIV and AIDS is between the ages of 14 and 24, which is part of the population we will be serving. So being able to connect them to a resource where they can get education on PrEP and safe sex, being able to connect them to other communities such as support groups like the Trans Alliance support group in the community. So
let me ask you, and this is a question for both of y'all because you may have different opinions on this subject, but a dream for Kitsap County from the perspective of Northwest Hopeful Horizons. What would you like to see here in your hometown?
I would like to see more acceptance, and I say that, like, as we are very open, we still have people who are wearing things like there are only two genders, or people being angry at teachers wearing dresses and trying to educate their students on how what you wear doesn't matter. And seeing that it's hard to see that kind of stuff in Kitsap County, knowing, as I always thought, like, oh, that kind of stuff doesn't happen here. Like, we're more liberal, we're more open. But the reality is, like, it still does. So being able to have more spaces like us and more open places where people can feel comfortable and safe and heard.
I agree with Andy, and also adding in open-mindedness and inclusion. Just if we go into things with open-mindedness, we don't always have to at first accept, but if we can acknowledge and be willing to learn, I think that makes a world of difference, that we all don't have to be the same as human beings, that we can include everyone under the spectrum of what it is to be a human.
Angela, Andy, I appreciate you coming on to my show today and sharing your mission with myself and with Kitsap County. I too dream of a place that offers love and inclusion for all, and hopefully together we can make this happen. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Ash.
Thank you.
Thank you. Suicide is a complex issue, but it's not inevitable. There's hope, and organizations like Northwest Hopeful Horizons are living proof of that. They're actively working to create a world where everyone has the support that they need to succeed. If you or someone you know is struggling with issues in your life and you would like to speak with someone, please remember that help is available. Reach out to someone you can trust. Contact the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Contact the Trevor Project, which provides several valuable lifelines to those in crisis. Please remember that your voice matters, and there are caring individuals ready to listen. A special thank you to Angela and Andy Lujan for sharing their personal journeys and the impactful work of Northwest Hopeful Horizons. Your dedication to advocacy, education, and creating a more inclusive community is truly inspiring to us all. If you would like to get involved in their mission, please feel free to find Angela and Andy at northwesthopefulhorizons.org. And you can always find us right here at Afternoons with Ash on BKAT. And don't forget, you can reach out directly anytime with your comments, concerns, suggestions at Afternoons with Ash on Facebook.com, or email us at afternoonswithash@gmail.com.